hosted by Daniel Peterson.
Good day, everybody. Today we're here with great bass player Schalk van der Merwe. Schalk, can you tell us what your first musical experience was?
I grew up in a household. My mother studied music. My dad was into jazz piano. So the records that I heard, like nice warm vinyl recordings of Mozart, Beethoven, a lot of classical music. And so that's my early template. Was that I was humming Mozart. I can't tell you what. It wasn't too complicated. He wrote quite easy stuff as well for kids. I would hum those kind of things, and then also big band film scores, from the mid 20th century, the 50s, 60s. My dad was into Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, those kind of things. And so, I listened to a bit of Henry Mancini. I love the Pink Panther album, that soundtrack. And then when I was about 6 or 7, Elvis. And I always joke with, in sub A or grade 1, I'll come home from school and I'll put on my Jakkels en Wolf story plot and I'll listen to stories and then and Lieve Hexie and those kind of things. But when I was about 7 or 8, every day Elvis. But not Vegas Elvis, early Elvis. And that was fantastic, and I was very much into that. And that's the kind of thing. Jakkels en Wolf, Mozart, and Elvis. Pink Panther.
It's a very nice combination. So, Schalk, can you tell us why you chose the bass guitar?
It's funny, I started on piano, so I did classical piano for 7 years at school. Then I dropped it in high school because it was I didn't excel in it, but I was okay, like the standard Unisa classical stuff. And I picked up a guitar and I taught myself guitar. Then I got to varsity at Stellenbosch and I joined a few bands as a guitarist, as one does, I suppose. And then end of 1997, we had a band called Billy Goat. And we had organized a national tour. We would tour down the coast, down the Garden Route, all the way to, I think, Port Alfred in East London. And then we had a New Year's gig at Oppikoppi. And we had an album out by that time. We had quite a following. And Schalk was the bass player in Billy Goat, and I was one of the guitarists. We had 2 guitarists. Call me a rhythm guitarist because I wasn't as good as Guy Collins, who was the lead guitarist. And then Schalk couldn't make the tour because he was playing with Valiant Swift at the time as well, and Anton Goosen, I think. So we needed a bass player for the tour. We auditioned 2 guys, great players, but none of them could make the tour. So I thought, well, I know the songs. I borrowed a headless Hohner, those Hohner basses. They're super modern, very small body, headless headstock. So I borrowed one of those, and I borrowed a Trace Elliott amp from another friend of mine, and we went on tour, and I played bass. And immediately, it felt right. I told myself, I'm not going to approach this as a guitar with 2, but just 4 strings. I'm going to play this as an instrument in its own right, and I immediately felt comfortable with it. And the band bought me my first bass, so I stuck to the bass. I had to give, obviously the Hohner had to go back, so I had a chord. It was a kind of a P bass setup, but a chord bass, and then that was my first bass that I started playing with, and then from there on, it just
Interesting. Tell me, do you have any musical education? Are you self-taught or did you go for lessons?
I took classical piano lessons. So I've got grade 6 Unisa classical music and theory. For what that was a hell of a long time ago. And everything else is self-taught, no lessons. But, funnily enough, I am a popular music scholar. So I do research on me in the academic sense. But it's not. I'm not a musicologist, but I do kind of. My research does border on musicology and ethnomusicology and popular music studies. So I've got an academic interest in music, but not trained or I would say I didn't go to the conservatoire and get a degree in music, but I do have a PhD on the history of music in South Africa. But anyway, for what it's worth. Yeah.
Interesting. Can you tell us about the albums and the artists that you played for and played on?
My first album that I played on was Billy Gate in 1996, I think. We did 2 albums. I recorded quite a few albums with a blues band called Delta Blue about 20 years ago. I've recorded with Valiant Swart, my band Ben on Bricks. We did about 4 or 5 albums. And I've played on numerous, I think somewhere around 70 albums.
Wow.
Since 2010, I've played on all Karen Zoid's albums. I think I don't know how many there are.
So you currently play for Karen Zoid?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been 10 years now.
Wow.
11, more than 10 years, yeah.
That's a nice gig.
It's a nice gig, yes. She gave me this bass.
Wow, wow.
So this was a Prezi. Thanks, Karen. Still love it. And this is my go-to bass, mostly for all the live shows, and we do that Republiek Zuid-Afrika TV show where we collaborate with all the different artists and stuff. So that's been cool as well. So I think I've done 5 seasons of that. Wow. Yeah. And we just dropped the album 2 weeks ago of covers, nice covers. There's some done in our way kind of thing. Yeah.
That's interesting. Can you tell me about the gear that you have?
Okay. This birthday Prezi is a American professional series Fender 5-string P bass. Traditionally I didn't like 5-string Fenders. And when they had all inline tunes like that, I don't really like them, and I wasn't always convinced that the lower B is as solid on those 5-string basses. There might have been a patch where it wasn't as great, but this is fantastic. Maple neck fretboard. I really like this. It's a nice bass. I've got Music Man Stingray 5, which was my go-to bass for about 15 years. I've played probably 1,500 gigs on that one. I'm close to 300 for this one. And how many albums? I think 7 albums on this one. Amp-wise, I've got a scaled down, so I'm not that young anymore. And I can't be asked to carry a very heavy amp upstairs into, So I've got a Mark bass, little Mark 3 head, which is just a 2x10 cab, which is nice and light. So this I travel with it, So we often on lineups and big stages, and or theaters or whatever. And my tech rider is just just a cab. So I take my head with me. Pedals, I've got all Boss pedals, a tuner, a bass comp that I don't use. I don't really play with it anymore. A bass driver, which I kind of like, this BB1X. I'll just show you. It's got and then I've got a Octave OC3 super octave pedal. You just sometimes, if you want that atmospheric evil, that's it. But yeah, that's pretty basic. I do have a big muff pie for more fuzz. I've got an envelope filter, Ashdown envelope filter pedal, and also electro-harmonics baseball, and they just go wah 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 wah. But it's very rare that you get a chance to use that. That's not on my pedal board.
Wow. Can you give any advice for young up and coming bass players and musicians, please?
Y- Starting with bass, you know, I personally am not kind of I'm not a flashy bass player. What I like about bass is it's got a blue collar vibe to it. You know, it's an honest working person's instrument, but it's also the important one because you're that bridge between rhythm and melody. And don't come and show off your chops. You know, that's not your primary purpose in an ensemble. It's to carry everything else. Leave space for the vocalist, um, and 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 if you can insert beauty, you know, there's nothing nicer than just a beautiful turn on the bass that can change the feeling of a song, and that's not necessarily a technical thing. It's an ear thing, a feeling thing. So be mindful when you play with other people. Give them space as well. As a bass player, as just young musicians in general, you know, I see so many freakishly talented musicians. I'd rather get tips from them than give them tips. But as a touring musician, you know, that spends a lot of time on the road, your band becomes your family as well. And be mindful of not just your playing, but your behavior and your dependability. Don't bring as far as you can, don't bring your personal angst and troubles with you on tour or to the show. If your ensemble, your band, I know with us, it's kind of a safe haven, it's a sacred space. And that means quite a hell of a lot for us as bandmates. You know, the four of us get into a room, and it's almost it's a sanctuary. So be mindful of that. Then you'll be making beautiful music, and it'll be meaningful to you and to others as well.
Schalk, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the advice. Thank you for making time for me and for allowing me in your beautiful space here in Stellenbosch. It's a beautiful day outside, cloudy, but it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. And Godspeed on your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for liking and sharing this video with your family and friends. Please follow From the Cape with Bass on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much. God bless you.